thank you all so much for being here. It's completely full. Very last minute, we added some people from the waiting list, so thank you all very much. Are there still some free chairs somewhere? Because some people are standing. Where are the free chairs? There's one here. Somebody wants to come sit over here, at the end over there. All right, let's start. My name is Monique van Dusseldorp. For some of you that have been here at previous flagship events, you might have seen me on stage. I put together speaker programs. Sometimes I also do some of the moderation. And I keep this secret list for myself of famous Dutch people that did fantastic work in tech. And, you know, like every year I try to reach out to them and get them on some stage. So I am personally super delighted that we have Guido van Rossum here, who, you know, mailed with a few times. And he finally came around at a very important moment because he actually retired 12 days ago, you know. End of the line. Yeah. Now, there's a story about AI House, Prosus, where we are. We'll save that for later. For now, I just would like to find out who's here in the audience. And of course, we want to know who writes Python code every week, who works with it. Ooh. Who's been writing Python code for more than 10 years? Yes. Who has actually sent in a PEP, a Python enhancement proposal? Oh, our benevolent dictator over there has. Now, the honorary guest of this evening is, of course, Guido, depending where you come from. We say Guido van Rossum, the creator of Python. And I would like to do a bit of a long introduction of his work and some of the story of Python, and we'll use some video that was made about the history of Python. After this, we'll have a conversation that will be led by Beinat, who's head of AI for Prosus Naspers, and later on, Vanessa Evers will also join of the CWI, the place where Guido originally started his work. But first of all, and then don't forget, at the end, there's a Q&A with the audience, so prepare your questions. And they can be general, they can be anecdotal, they can be super technical. We have made some space in the program for all of you to ask questions. And then I'll stop with the very practical stuff, apart from make sure your phone is on silent. Then at the very end, some of you feel maybe like me, that you're in the house with a legend and you want to be in a picture with him. Now, instead of doing all these requests, and we know that he doesn't really like all those requests, we'll do one at the end all together. So anybody that wants to be in that picture at the end, he doesn't know this, but he knows now. We'll do one picture together. All right, we have 4 short clips, and I'll run the first one now, which also has some of the credits, but I decided to include the credits because it's such a wonderful, beautiful documentary you can see in full, 90 minutes on YouTube. Let's do the first one.
Did you think Python was going to get popular from the beginning, or?
We don't see it yet, so maybe. Yeah, let's restart that.
Did you think Python?
Sound is nice as well.
Did you think Python was going to get
This is
popular
not the
from
start of the first
beginning,
moment.
or?
Oh yeah, it is. There we go.
Python has contributed to making critical thinking a little more approachable by more people.
You can spend 1 to 2 hours learning programming fundamentals, and then you can write like 10 to 20 lines of code that do something interesting.
The language, the community, the ecosystem, the market, the whole thing has had such an impact on humanity.
Today, I think it's safe to say that almost anywhere there's a computer, there's probably some Python.
It's literally on Mars. The impact of AI, I think we're still seeing what that's going to be. Python is incredibly important for that.
To fully understand how Python got so big, we have to go back in time. maybe not that far back. Everything started back in Amsterdam in the 80s during my time at CWI, a Dutch research facility.
Now, indeed, CWI here in Amsterdam. Guido was working there, working on a programming language called ABC. But for those of you born after 1989, this was a time before the World Wide Web. So there was Usenet, but if you wanted to distribute code, you basically had to put it on a diskette and send it by mail. So this is a very, very early time. But nevertheless, there was a full awareness that it was important and that you needed to develop things. And so Guido, at one point, working on this ABC language, which was complicated and hard, had a long, empty Christmas holiday. Let's see what happens. Let's run the
So I
second
thought,
clip.
well, there really ought.
With video. Yeah.
So I thought, well, there really ought to be a language that sort of bridges the
sorry,
gap
we don't see
between
the
C and
video.
shell. And we looked at Perl, and we didn't think it was any good as a programming language. It was about as bad as BASIC, although in different ways. So Python was also, in a part, built as an alternative to Perl. That's where I decided, oh, well, I'm going to see if I can make my own programming language.
That Christmas holiday, he worked on something, went back to CWI, showed it to his colleagues, and it took quite a while for it to get picked up by people across Usenet, you know, sharing it online, and people could download it easily, and a lot of the people that used it immediately were based in the United States, where Guido eventually moved. But what's so interesting in the story of Python is how this was developed, first of all, by one person, but then by this incredible community. And there's two moments in the history of Python where, I mean, it was moving from Python 3 to 4, which took 10 years and a lot of protest, but it was also a particular change. Let's see a little bit longer clip. This is 2 minutes about this working with the community.
I always kind of looked at myself as the bass player of Python, which is great. You know, you can do a lot, you can have fun, and the spotlight's not on you. And I love that. I can't imagine having that kind of spotlight on you, you know, for so many years.
I heard a story from an Apple VP of engineering that Steve Jobs had turned down their hire of Guido because he said he has his own following and we don't want to have that kind of distraction.
Python has always been a language that changed. We've never been one of those languages that says, if you write code against this version of Python, it will run forever with any new version of the language. We just simply have never been those people.
A PEP is an acronym for Python Enhancement Proposal. That's a document that's written by someone who wants to make a significant change to Python. Basically, you're trying to convince people that this is a good idea. It would be sent for discussion for a mailing list. And then eventually, Guido, as the BDFL, the benevolent dictator for life, would decide whether your change was going in or not.
But people always have worried that the next change is going to be the one that changes the feel of the language. It won't fit my brain anymore, or it won't be accessible anymore. I've actually seen people storm out of rooms saying, you're ruining this language. Some people take it very, very personally and seriously. And the Wallis operator was no different.
Yeah, so PEP
572.
I don't know who coined the term the walrus operator, but if you kind of turn your head, it looks like a little walrus. It was a new feature that was proposed, but it was also a syntax change.
The walrus operator lets you do assignments, meaning put values into variables in places that you previously could not.
That was probably the most contentious language change, oddly enough.
All right, so something happened there. And I said there was two big emotional arcs in the history of Python. One was this moving from 3 to 4, but the other was this moment. And I know Guido has talked told this story so many times, so I thought let's just have it shared it here on stage before he dives into the conversation with your Beinat, because at one point it was enough. He didn't want to do this anymore. Let's run the last clip. It's very short.
Transfer of power. And now that PEP 572 is done, I don't ever want to have to fight so hard for a PEP and find that so many people despise my decisions. I would like to remove myself entirely from the decision process. I'm basically giving myself a permanent vacation from being BDFL, and you all will be on your own. I am not going to appoint a successor. So what are you all going to do? Create a democracy? Anarchy? A dictatorship? A federation? I'll still be here, but I'm trying to let you all figure something out for yourselves. I'm tired and I need a very long break. And that was it. I haven't read that. That was, I thought that was pretty well written.
I like to say he mic dropped his way out. You know, he just was like, I'm out, I'm done, you guys figure it out. So it was a complete and total shock to me, yeah.
All right. After that complete and total shock, it was so interesting to see anarchy, democracy, what will be done, what systems, lots of people with very heavy opinions. In the end, they formed a council. Guido joined that council. And then at the end, you know, it's now running fine. And after 49 years, Guido is leaving the screens and he's here for this conversation about technology, about Python, about AI, and where we are going next, especially as developers. We are super happy that Guido's here, just giving a big applause. And he will be interviewed by your Beinat, head of AI for Naspers Prosus. Join us on stage.
All right. Oh, it seems that mine works. Guido, can you try yours?
Hello?
All right. Good
Where do you want
afternoon.
me?
You wherever you like. It's all right. You choose. That fine?
I'll see.
All right. Great. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thanks, Guido, for being here. That's very kind of you. I think
My pleasure.
It's a lot of people that really look forward to discussing Python, discussing AI, discussing the future of coding with you. Thank you all for being here as well. My name is Euro. I'm the Chief AI Officer, I think, for Prosus. That's the title. I lead everything that has to do with AI for Prosus. So, lots of questions, and you will have more questions later on. So let's kick off with some of the first ones, and then Vanessa is going to join us on stage. So, you've seen the last bomb that you dropped here.
I remember it well.
I think that's true. Anyways, so let's start with this one here. Back in the 80s, you started Python, and then it became a global phenomenon and so on. Two questions. I mean, how does it feel after all that time? And second one, do you see something that happens now in the AI world, right? All this ecosystem of AI that resembles that time before Netscape, right? So it's still at the very beginning. AI is something that starts now, in spite of all the, let's say, the attention it does. We're still at the very beginning. Is it something that, you know, you can connect, resembles the 80s or 90s in coding?
Ouch. So, your first question, how does it feel?
Yes.
Well, I'm very proud. I had never expected this outcome. I had expected that like all my other open source attempts, there would be like 50 downloads, 10 people managed to compile it, one of them gave feedback, and that would be about it.
Successful.
No, it immediately took off. And I'm still searching for why. But yeah, is this a similar time for AI? I'm struggling to find analogies. Did my mic just cut out? Yeah. Yes. Hello? Yeah.
If it doesn't work, we can try this.
Yeah, it stopped working.
Yeah,
I probably accidentally set on a button. But if this works, it does. Oh, red light is on. Green light is off. I don't see the analogy because Python.
How about now? Oh, even better. Python was literally one guy at home and in a tiny office shared with 2 other people, working on something where my main motivation was to have fun. I wanted to sort of learn what it was like to design and build language. Previously, I had worked on ABC, as Monique mentioned, but that was not my idea. Python was my idea. What I see in AI is huge labs with billions and billions of investments have been working on this for decades. And yes, they sort of, I don't think anybody had expected that something like ChatGPT was going to be so successful. But it certainly was not one guy or one mad scientist in a lab. It was a huge process of financing very ambitious people, which I'm absolutely not. So I'm sorry.
There's no comparison.
No.
No. By the way, when Vanessa comes on stage, she reminds us that some of your work at CVI at the beginning, right, was not necessarily, let's say, people expected you to do research, not to do, let's say, Python. But we'll discuss about that later a bit. You have given a lot of talks and interviews and so on, and many people ask you about, so how do you look at AI for coding, right? And in many cases, you have mentioned that you use it, in the sense that you use LLM for coding, that you have clear views about where it can be useful, where it's not a good idea, and so on. Actually, we struggle with that, or we spend a lot of time with that because all the coders across our group use AI every day. They use Python every day. They use AI every day. They combine them. And it's not very clear where the boundary should be. To what extent you let these tools to become autonomous code developers, and where you should put boundaries where this thing has to be reviewed by a human, right? So that boundary is a difficult one, right? We don't know where it is. What's your experience? What would be your advice? Where would you put, what's your boundary for you?
Well, my boundary is to see AI as purely a tool. It can do some things amazing, like it seems to understand natural language well enough that it can turn it into all kinds of actions. Say in a code editor, you can say indent everything more or make all these functions async. It's great at that. You can also try to tell it, build my own implementation of MS Word. It's not that good at that yet. Certainly not if those are the only instructions you give it. It would probably cheat, actually. It would probably wrap the existing MS Word in an API. So other people are more optimistic. There are people who believe that in a few years, or maybe yesterday, AI systems can sort of work in swarms of agents that build entire complex applications from specifications. I think that it remains to be seen what the quality of the resulting code is. I mean, when humans were coding, it took long enough to sort of figure out best practices for human coders. And there were a lot of people writing code without really understanding how important certain aspects like security or safety were, or performance in many cases. And you have to sort of train the humans to be aware of many of those requirements that are not sort of directly explicit in the requirement. When you say, write me an MS Word clone, well, what if that MS Word clone runs at 1,000th of the speed of the actual MS Word? Is it still an MS Word clone? Some people will claim yes, because technically it has the same functionality, but it's of course useless. So I think it's way too soon to have a good understanding of how successful this movement to letting the AI do everything really is going to be. On the other hand, using AI as a tool to write parts of your code that you then sort of carefully, or in some cases not super carefully but still superficially review, that I think at this point is a proven good use of AI. And I hope that in many other fields similar things occur, where similar developments where white-collar workers, people who know how certain jobs need to be done, but who find those jobs boring, or at least find certain aspects of their jobs boring, will be able to use AI to come up with better automation. And I think that's, so I'm moderately optimistic about that. I'm not so optimistic about, oh, in 5 years AI will have cured cancer. If cancer is cured in 5 years, it's because all the doctors in the world have started using AI to help them a bit.
Well, you know that there is this joke in AI that AI will find it easier to cure cancer than to replace Accenture. so maybe that actually works at the end of the day. However, I mean, just double clicking on this one here. So our experience is that with all the developers writing code with AI, some better than others, some has figured out ways to tame the machine if you want, but those that are successful, they produce, I mean, 10 times more code than others, right? So they're producing a lot more. And another thing of the system cracks is because if you still have human review, then you get 20 more people that need to do the human review. So you end up doing machine review in any case because you can't actually otherwise get the benefits. So somehow this idea that humans have to review, either it is what needs to happen and then all the speed that we can imagine or the improvement we can imagine cannot be realized, or we have to find other ways, right?
Well, there are certainly things that you could do where you write prototypes of a variety of approaches to addressing a problem where you don't know yet how the problem is best solved. You can write prototypes without having particularly intense focus on, say, security or maybe even performance, depending on the problem, or code quality or hallucinations even. It could write super verbose, ugly code for all you care, but it still generates like 10, 20, maybe 50 versions of a piece of code that solve a certain problem. And then you can just try them, and that, of course, you can also automate with the help of a vibe coding little ad hoc utility. And then you can say, oh, this approach actually works much better than most other approaches. Let's double click on that.
Yeah. So that's in fact happens because then you separate out the design from the test, and the test is part of the design, in fact, right? So because you get many prototypes and so on. But let's go back to Python and stay with AI. So I did a test this afternoon, and I asked Claude a very simple question. And I asked it, give me a honest answer, right? So that's my question. Give me an honest answer. Do you think Claude could create from scratch a better coding language than Python? Now it's a tricky question because you say better, what does better mean? So it was not specified. It was really, let's say, very, very, very high level and so on. And then you ask an LLM to think from scratch, which makes no sense because it has learned everything anyway. So it cannot do that. Anyway, the answer is yes, right? The answer, the answer is yes in terms of design and of correcting all the known limitations of Python. So I says yes. I'm not saying that, Claude, right? But then it also say no in terms of creating a community around that tool. And they said, well, okay, fine, what's the weight of the two? Design, 5%, 95% community. So it says, well, design something better than Python is not that easy, but hold it for now. It's like, I say, fine, I'll discuss this with Guido van Rossum. Do you want to add anything? And it says,
you're so anthropomorphizing this pile of bits. I'm getting tears.
Yeah.
From laughter.
And he says he probably disagrees with 5% in design, right? Once more. But anyway, let me know what he says.
Oh, I think it's more like 1%. The sort of, if you didn't have to deal with backwards compatibility, of course you could make a better language. But the chance of getting that better language adopted by any number, a serious number of coders is practically zero. So community or no community, but just the fact that you would be breaking backwards compatibility in order to be a better language makes it a non-starter.
So you sort of disagree. I think Claude wanted to sort of apologize and said, well, no, probably thinks it's 25%, not 1%. But he says 1%. Okay, great. So it is the power of the community here, right? Let me, another question which has to do with the fact that, so what we try to do within Prosus is we give everybody, every single colleague, an agent creation tool in such a way they can create apps and agents that work for themselves. And when I say everybody, it's not only the developers, it is the lawyer, the accountants, everybody, right?
The chef?
The chef, everybody. Everybody has the tools for creating something that's potentially useful for them, right? Of course, the coders do that as well. So they use various tools for improving coding. The surprising part is everybody else. What they do is that through prompting to interaction and so on, create artifacts that some time ago only coders could create, right? So they create artifacts which on the surface, they're not distinguishable from what coders do, not from inside probably, but from the surface not. And they use a programming language, in this case is English, right? Which is a very common programming language.
It's not a programming language.
Anyway.
It is fundamentally ambiguous.
That's fine.
And all the effort has to go into making things not ambiguous so that the computer can actually do something with it.
And that's my question. So now you have Python here, which is, yes, it's an abstraction of the machine, which is close enough to human language, so we can actually read it, and that's part of the success of this language, right? The other extreme, you have a completely ambiguous language, which still you can feed to a machine, and it gets artifacts which are similar. Have you thought that there is somewhere in between another programming language that can get best of the first one here, Python and English? If you were to start now and design a programming language for AI, would you still do Python or would you do something else?
I don't know. I get that question a lot, actually. Like, what would you do different 35 years ago? And my answer is we made plenty of mistakes, and I can list a few, and I would be very reluctant to go back in time and with a time machine and fix any of those mistakes, because it's like the old story of the butterfly that flaps its wings and causes a tornado on a different continent. There are so many sort of steps to getting a language successful that if you change anything, just like if you change one word in your AI prompt, you get a completely different answer. The same is true here. And honestly, most of the changes you could make will just kill the whole thing by accident, by somehow fixing one thing but accidentally replacing it with another bug or another sort of plugging off another option for extensions or variations. So, yeah, could you design a better language now? Is it better to use braces after all or not? Who knows?
So you don't see an obvious space for that, right? So this is all the language we have, and this is what we are doing with other tools. Is there a space in between that you think deserves the attention of designers for a better language? Or more suitable language, not better, something that fits more what people do, not necessarily the coders.
I don't think that getting an AI to design a new programming language is actually a good use of tokens. If you look at the successful languages, they've been created by highly creative and highly skilled humans over a long time. I mean, if you look at how long it took Rust to sort of deserve a spot in the top 25 of programming languages, that happened not just because Rust was maybe in some way a better language than C++. It also happens because of the incredible dedication of the creators and the early community around Rust. And I don't think those are things that AIs can sort of replace. So the sort of this absolute belief in technology can solve everything, I feel it's misplaced.
I like this statement that developing a new coding language is a good use of tokens, so we're going to reuse it. Okay. Let me. No, I think I actually agree. There's a reason why I asked Claude to give some feedback on this one here. Let's change gear a little bit here, and then it has to do more what we try to do here in the AI House, which is that of getting people together. The idea is that the more the community is vibrant, the better it's for everybody, including for us that we support that. You started your career in the Netherlands, right? So, and then at a certain point you moved to the US and you spent a large part of your career in the United States. Right? So that's So what would have kept you here? What are the conditions for you to stay here? I mean, this is something that happens to all the startups, a lot of talent and so on. They start here, they start the first part of their career and then go elsewhere. What would it have been for you, the recipe to stay here?
I probably would have enjoyed staying at CWI, which I think is a fantastic place and to which I owe an enormous amount of ideas and random inspiration that led to Python. If CWI had allowed me to stay without pressure to produce papers, because I actually joined CWI because it gave me a path forward where I could do what to me at the time and really still was the sort of the most fun I can have, which is creating software. So if there wasn't growing pressure to produce papers, and I would probably have had to have support of a couple of other people to help me build out Python. Like the documentary that you saw some fragments of started out with Barry Warsaw, who literally was the guy who hired me who told his boss to hire me. That caused me to come to the US. He then became one of the key members of the small team around me. There were two other people at CNRI in America already that sort of were also very interested in working with me. And we hired a few more, mostly from actually from existing pool of prolific Python contributors. If I could have had the same thing at CWI, I would have been very happy. But of course, the process that leads to sort of large investments of money what as you need for even a 3-person team, just doesn't allow that because it's an academic institution. And I had no intention to sort of do a spin out or startup or any of those things. I need someone else to take care that there's a building and a working restroom and all that.
That makes sense. I'm looking, where's Vanessa? I think I would love to have you on stage here because Vanessa is the current director of CVI.
Yeah, this is a good segue, I would say.
Yeah. This is like the worst stage entry ever.
Please join us, Vanessa Evers. So Vanessa is the director of CVI, is professor of human and media interaction at Twente, and she came back from the US at some point as well, and so on. And in any case, Vanessa, so let's say the segue is obvious, right? So I'm pretty sure that at CVI there are a number of Guidos at this point in time, right? How can we keep them?
Yeah, good question. I always feel a little bit like a rom-com movie. You know, Guido is the one that got away. It's kind of the atmosphere at CWI. What did we do? How stupid were we? Is kind of the sentiment that is left there. And of course, I can't hide by saying, well, it happened a long time ago. I wasn't there. I think there is definitely what you say, Guido, is absolutely true. It's an academic institution. The lines are long. The funding hasn't increased since the 80s. So that means that someone's there. It's about excellent science. And unless they die, you know, there's no room for someone new or to just create a crazy team just like that. I mean, of course, you can get EU projects and then maybe for 4 years, maybe with a big project, 10 years, you could create, you know, a team around someone and hope to grow that. But you don't have that flexibility. You don't have the flexibility of saying, wow, something special is here. I'm going to put 5 people against it, just see where it goes. Not just see where it runs. I mean, that would have been ideal, of course. So we have, I feel, new Guidos. One of them is actually here. Stacey Jeffries is somewhere here, who we feel is the next Python answer in the quantum world. Where is she, Stacey? Just there with a little finger, being very,
don't go
very
away.
shy. Being very shy. Stacey just started a spin-off around a new company called QLever, and so we're trying hard to think, okay, how can we create such an atmosphere that you can remain a researcher if you so desire, but also have a successful spin-off. And I've noticed it's very hard. You know, the culture is so ingrained, and very quickly, all these, of course, all the rules around knowledge safety come in. So it's like, well, when you walk around here as a researcher, it's different than when you walk around here as an entrepreneur, and you're talking to everyone, and you know, which ideas do you take into your company and monetize, and which don't you? And these are really difficult discussions, which none of us want to have. So I would say those are 2 big stumbling blocks that kind of, I want to say, old-fashioned culture, and yeah, the long lines, the lack of funding or funny money or something that you can be flexible and creative.
All right.
So sad. I sound so depressed. I don't mean to.
No.
Oh God, bore me.
Let's go back to Guido and papers at the beginning, because that's an interesting one.
Yeah, Guido's papers. Well, I wasn't there. If I had been there, no. It would have all been very different. Yeah, this happens. I mean, it happens now, right? You know, I mean, the example here is like, okay, we are a research institute. We want our excellent name, and that means scientific products. But, you know, great practical applications and wonderful startups are also really possible. The only thing I can say is the science happens kind of before the startup or the practical application, and a deep knowledge about a topic. And you kind of are able to build that up in such an environment as CWI. And I guess one way to put it is that, okay, then you kind of give it back to society, you know, and that can be in the shape of a whole research team that merges into a university, or a wonderful programming language that conquers the world, or a spin-off or startup. Is it ideal? No, of course. I wish we could have kind of a crazy ideas cabinet where we can say like, okay, we're going to go nuts on this for 5 years, see where it goes, and then have a look again.
Yeah, well, from the outside, it feels like, you've been at the center of the internet for many, many years, right? And then there's a lot of things that happen in the internet, which one way or the other, they stem from the work of CVI, but you don't get the recognition you deserve, right? So I think that's something that somehow it has to be fixed. I don't know how and so on. I think that's something that has to be fixed. But let me ask you another thing here, because we really care about artificial intelligence here, just my job, but in any case, it's something that, in particular in this environment, is what we discuss every day. What are your plans for CVI for the next 5 years? So where do you put your bets in AI? What is the type of research you really want to shine? What are the things that you really bet on?
Well, we are, like I said, we are quite a small institute, and we have a few pinnacles of really excellent knowledge, but we don't have a critical mass around any of these topics. So, if I get my way, I think CWI should be doubled in people, and then really focus on a few core aspects. Some of the elements are already there, like kind of neuromorphic computing, looking at how we can be much more electricity friendly in computing and in AI. The other aspect is that we are a national institute, so we live to serve the Netherlands and of course Europe and internationally, but the whole field of mathematics and computer science and the crossover fields and our interdisciplinary connections to other fields are very important. We, as a national institute, you can't be selfish. So in that way, you really want to look ahead, beyond 5 years and say, what's the next thing? What's going to happen after AI? Where can we find those ideas, and in the long line invest in those? Already calculating who's retiring. Sorry, Paul. And thinking like, who could fill that place with a new idea?
Yeah. And Guido, if you were to ask, let's say, the director of CVI here, what they should do,
Please, Guido, help me.
What would you advise, or what would you ask?
I was thinking the current sort of fad of LLMs will run its course. Maybe it'll kill us all. I don't think that chance is very high, but some people are scared shitless. See what other forms of AI exist. I just read a book about the founder of DeepMind that also gave an abbreviated and biased history of AI over the last couple decades. And DeepMind in particular did, starting with their Go playing program, AlphaGo, a whole bunch of AI that is fundamentally not LLMs, with which they have solved amazing problems like protein folding, not using LLMs. So try to look beyond the sort of the current development, because why waste your time on making LLMs a little better or using them a little smarter when everyone else in the world is already doing the same thing with a lot of venture capital? I hope that's not terrible.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's crazy how much money goes into it. Right? Or the whole promise of AGI. If you cause AGI, the millions keep coming in. And I'm more in robotics personally with my research. Also, the amount of money that goes into humanoid robots. Who needs a humanoid robot? I mean, really. It's like all the money. If you make another great robot, forget it. There's no money for you. You just have to work on it. It's crazy. So there was some, I don't know, weird hype cycle manosphere thing. I have no idea.
People are inspired by science fiction.
Let me push back
and sort of nerdy people like us are especially inspired by science fiction.
Yeah. Let me push back a bit on this thing.
It's going totally the wrong direction.
Because what we've seen with LLMs is that they were bad in 2021, they were a little bit better in 2022, they're a lot better in 23, and they get better all the time. And a lot of the things that we really want to do with them were impossible 2 years ago, they're possible now. A lot of the artifacts that we do coding with LLMs were impossible a year ago, now they're possible, and they work, and they're safe, and they're controlled. So there's a lot of research that goes in that, right? And for good reasons, because you have the outcomes. I don't think we are anywhere close to what these things can do. Right? So there is still a long way. I don't know, maybe 3, maybe 5, maybe 10 years before we say, all right, fine, this is plateaued, go away. That's true. This research drains 98% of all the capital about research about AI, and that's a problem, right? But it's not that these things are done. I don't think that for a single minute.
But that's not what I said, that it was done. I said that there's already so much activity in that field.
Yeah. Therefore, it's a good idea to go somewhere else. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Vanessa, you work a lot on, let's say, human robotics, human-machine interactions, and so on. So what have you learned from what humans want from that interactions, which is different from what companies want?
Yeah, it started off with thinking like, well, if there are going to be robotic services outside of factories, you know, how can you make that work for people, like in hospitals and stuff? How can you make it comfortable for patients or, you know, people in visiting Amsterdam and they want information? How do you do that? And that was really fun and interesting for a long time. You know, how do you recognize people? How do you stop in time if something happens? How do you recognize when a bunch of hooligans are in a fight? All these interesting challenges for computers and for robots. And now suddenly, you've created these great bodies, artificial bodies with all this awareness that could be used for these kind of services. And now there is AI. And suddenly that AI can have the beautiful bodies that we've created. And I didn't think of this. So I feel in two about it, I would say at least. Suddenly this AI can have action in the world, have a physical effect. And of course we see this with self-driving cars, but that's just a little start of it. We see it happening in the current wars. So I feel a little worried about where that goes, the combination of the physical and the language-based. There are some challenges. I don't know. I mean, I don't know everything about LLMs, but a while back, I think Jan LeCun was still saying like, well, it's impossible to move from LLMs to like the real world because, you know, when a painting falls down, never up, and, you know, how do you put that in there? And you can't predict what the next scene is going to be in any picture, but it is starting to look like we're getting a little bit closer and closer in that real world model with the old-fashioned way, which is kind of, I don't know, disappointing. You know, I was hoping for a crazy breakthrough, like a whole different way of doing that. But yeah, it seems to be powerful. And to your point of like, are we there with LLMs? I mean, one of the things, of course, the mathematicians at our institute at CWR are super excited about what LLMs can do for math. You know, very recently, of course, that Terence Tao, other people have showed that there are amazing achievements currently that are happening with thanks of AI. So this transformation of science in fields like math and computer science, but really in any field, is also very interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's say I'm super positive about this. Otherwise, we'll never do this job, of course, but that's a different story. It's everything that we see that we can do with AI. It was not possible a few years back. We see companies working a different way. We see individuals that achieve much more because they have more freedom, they have more agility, they don't need to tap the shoulders of their colleagues, right? And they can do more that they couldn't do before. So I'm in general, and I think, extremely positive about this. So I think
the sort of, sorry to interrupt, but when you say that AI reduces interaction between colleagues, that sounds like a 100% bad situation.
I haven't said that.
Well, I read it between the lines.
No, I haven't said that. I've said that you can do things that you couldn't do before without asking to your colleague. Now, you still ask for a colleague for something else, right? But you don't have to lean on knowledge, which is not yours. So you have a lot more independence, you have a lot more agency, and a lot more potential creativity. And to me, that is a net positive. I can't see any negative. The fact that you need to work with the others, I mean, that doesn't change. And and I think it's a net new. But it's good that you disagree.
You're hired to be positive about this, of course.
I designed myself to be positive. Yeah.
But even the act of asking a coworker a stupid question can turn into a bond between two people that wasn't there before, because maybe it wasn't a stupid question. Maybe the answer, the conversation that flows out of answering the question leads to a longer discussion about other things, and suddenly there's collaboration where there was none, and where there would have been none if each person would have been able to get all the answers they needed just by asking Claude.
I have a solution to that. I'll keep all the collaboration and asking a smarter question.
I think maybe there's also...
I think that dumb questions ought to be askable.
Yeah, that's fine.
My attitude is there are no dumb questions.
Yeah, no,
there's only attitude.
Yeah. I think there are lots of questions here that we are not really tackling. So, Monique, do you want to...
Well, very smart enough. Grant's over there. I'm here.
All right.
So for let's just
Microphones
see a show
are
of
here.
hands how many people want to ask a question. So we have some idea. Okay, I've got about 10 here. From about 20. That's a lot of questions for...
All right.
How do we have? All right.
Let's start. I start here. So you actually waved a lot, so you should start.
He's also wearing a Python logo.
Real fan.
With Hidden NFC. Hida, thank you for being with us. Right now I'm writing a new textbook on Python, and I want to ask your opinion. What is the most important thing we need to teach new software developers in the age of AI and cloud-assisted development?
Critical thinking.
All right. Okay, one from this side.
You don't want to elaborate more?
Okay, I'm going to exchange men and women questions. So where are the women asking questions? There you go.
Hi, I'm not a developer, so domain specific from business side. Where do you see domain specific languages like agent script, what Salesforce use for sales, for building sales agents? Do you see innovation possible there?
That's the first thing that gets replaced by AI, actually. Because agent script is a sort of dumbed down. I've never seen it. I've never heard the word, but I assume it's
it says it resembles Python.
Okay, fine. But it's probably somehow dumbed down. Because Salesforce. And if you work in English, you can use the real Python just as well.
Okay, well, now that you're no longer a dictator for life, what are the pet projects that you work on right now?
Retirement. It's a completely new frontier for me.
So you've stopped hitting the keyboard.
Exactly.
Okay, no more questions.
All right, I have one here.
You guys already kind of touched upon this. Elon, in like one of the recent interviews, said that AI will soon generate optimized binary directly, making human programming languages unnecessary bottleneck. So, any thoughts on this?
No.
But you did say that, right?
I'm sorry, but you said Elon, and I stopped listening.
One here.
All right, over to that one. Yeah, Grant, you've got one. Yeah, go ahead.
How do we stave off the death of competence? Because as we introduce more and more AI, the less we are doing ourselves, and so we don't have the knowledge that is foundational to build the next Python, or not even the next Python, just the next version of Python even. How does the community survive with competence?
Oh, the Python community is fine.
With that, right? So
no, this one I actually wanted to answer seriously. Competence is a big problem. It's one of the reasons why I equipped critical thinking as something that needs to be added to Python courses. Because if people lose competence, they become irrelevant. But in the end, it is also people who decide what they use AI for. If you really want to be the humans from the Wall-E movie who do no thinking at all, clearly have zero competence left, more or less. Well, it's a long time that I watched the movie, so I don't remember how it ends. But that I've heard this comparison a few times recently. If you're happy with that, by all means, vibe code your way to heaven. But for the rest of us who like to have some pride in our work, keep your competence, use the new tool. God, don't start digging ditches with shovels if you have a bulldozer or a backhoe at your command. But don't use that backhoe to do other things that a backhoe cannot do or can only do poorly. Remember, it is a power tool. It doesn't do your deciding and sort of, it's not all that good in designing and in the creative side, unless a creative human uses it.
All right, I've got one over here.
My name is Elizabeth. I follow your tweet and I liked very much, especially the humanity level besides the machine ideas. My question first is, do you believe AGI? Second is, do you believe in the near future the human nature language can 100% replace the so-called program language? If so, is good or bad? The third one is, you said that we should look beyond LLMs and DeepMind. So what else you are looking for? Can you share some direction with us? Thank you very much.
Right. AGI, replacing programming language, and the future. That's a big question.
Replacing.
I think that what will actually happen with AGI is that our definition of what is intelligence will shift. And so that forever AGI will be a couple of years in the future. And the Sam Altmans will, and certainly the Elon Musks are totally happy with that, because then people keep buying their services. But we don't have it, and I doubt that when they've built what they currently think that is AGI, that it actually is intelligent enough. It's also, sorry, yes?
No, we have so many people that want to ask questions.
Okay.
So I understand afterwards.
But there were two other parts to the question.
Can human language replace programming language?
Can AGI or LLMs replace replace programming languages? Not completely, because what the coding tools do is they generate programming languages which still they generate code that still has to be compiled by a compiler. And I don't see that sort of, well, I've always said that for example about Python, that it is more, code is read much more often than it is written. And so we should optimize for the reader of the code. but there is also something where programming languages provide appropriate abstractions. Imagine that you try to force your coding tool, Claude Code or whatever you have, Codex, to write assembly code, or even C. But if you skip the abstractions that excuse me, you find in C or Rust or Python or C++, you make it much harder for the AI to generate working code, just like you make it harder for the human. So that's sort of where I see the use of programming languages. And the future, thanks. I'm terrible at predicting the future because I just don't think that way. So I have not much guidance, and especially nowadays, be part of it and drive it, or sit back and it's like the weather. If you don't like it, wait 6 months.
Hello. Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, all of you. I'm an AI researcher in cancer, actually. I also hope it's going to be solved in 5 years. I was thinking when you created Python, you were thinking quite differently than the programming culture at the time. How do you come up with such disruptive ideas? And actually this question is also for you, Vanessa. How do you come up with disruptive ideas?
Python was much less disruptive in my mind than it was in the mind of the people who ended up using it the most. Because well, there were other languages that didn't believe in declaring all your variables and arguments and return types. The indentation was predicted by Knuth in a quote from, like, I think 73 or so, if it wasn't in the 60s. It's really hard to find actually new ideas, and most programming languages borrow so heavily from others. Yeah, so what makes something disruptive? Maybe that you expose other people who have not been sort of keeping up with the field to something that's new for them. And you can do that now too.
The gentleman with the red shirt there that tries to ask the question for a while now.
Yeah, and I think that was also for Vanessa, so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. No.
Sorry.
I think this is fine. We're all here to listen to Guido. I would move myself away if I could. Yeah, I think the disruptive part of Guido's idea was the community. It made it disruptive.
And I didn't invent that too. Perl had a fantastic community long before Python.
That's true.
But also, Vanessa, you work with many people that are stimulated to think very disruptively at CI.
Yeah, I think they are selected on the forefront, right? The people with amazing ideas, so they are, I don't know, born disruptive. I don't know, something like that. You need to find them. Yeah.
My question is to the panelist who is relatively quiet but doing a lot of awesome work here. So this is for you, Vanessa. What needs to be unlocked so that AI gets really better? AI really is a little terrible on math so far, but what needs to be unlocked so that large reasoning models are better at pure mathematical thinking, like inductive reasoning and other applications? And how do you see this trending here? Because if we go the LLM route of requiring tremendous amount of data and pattern to train, that won't be very efficient for the math.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Sorry to take time away.
I wouldn't know what to do with that question, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to make time so that I can think of what to do with the question. No. I think these large language models, they are huge, right? But if you want a very specialized tool for something to do in math or something to do in computer science, you need to maybe take something that's there, but then make a small version of it with expertise. And I feel like places like CWI, there is that crazy expertise. And then if you have some, I don't know, Ford engineering technician who is able to translate that expertise of a scientist or a researcher or programmer to the AI, you could have very special tools. On top of that is that if you kind of use the big tech tools, you know, one day they might say, well, no access for you. Or they might say, well, you can have access, but it's now 500 million per token, or I don't know. So then I feel if we as Europe or as the Netherlands invest in developing these very specialized scientific tools, then we can guarantee that the academic community has access to those tools in the future.
Yeah, and if I may add that one of the biggest problems that we all have in Europe at this moment is that if you continue using the tools of the big labs at scale as we do, then the cost of this operation for all the agents we're building become impossible, right? It is just not sustainable, and all these tools are currently subsidized. Therefore, you should expect that those subsidies will end, so it's going to be even more expensive, right? So you end up in open source, but where do you find open source, US or China, right? That's the reality of that. So we missed the boat in many ways in Europe for energy. We missed the boat for internet. We're missing another boat, which is that of an open source LLMs, right? And that is going to become a tricky problem very, very soon, right? That's something that somehow we need to find a solution. I don't have it, but that's obviously one of the problems that we need to solve. Yeah.
Okay, I've got one question here.
Well, thanks for the discussion, first of all. My question is about the upcoming AI lock-in. Since you have been discussing generating code all the time, and you're not discussing maintaining or evolving code. So I see a future where lots amount of code are generated. Nobody understands what's in there. There's now a trend that the AI providers give you for free their database with information on the basis of what that code is generated. Programmers don't understand it. Only the tool of that specific provider can do something, hopefully. And for people who are old enough as I am, may remember fourth generation languages, which was also a situation where you had a fourth generation language, code was generated. If the provider went out of business, you were completely stuck. And we are still patching here and there these problems since they remain here and there. So my question is, what is your perspective on this AI lock-in?
Is that for me or for Vanessa?
Please, for you.
No, I'm the positive one here, right? So
I'll back you up.
Oh, so first of all, yes, the AI has to maintain that code for the rest of times, but any AI can maintain code that another AI wrote. Also, all the state is stored on your local computer where you did the work to generate that code in the first place. Now, most people don't know where that state lives, and they lose it when they move on to a different computer. But in theory, you can solve that for yourself without sort of the vendor lock-in that you, I mean, vendor lock-in is something that you always want to avoid, but here I think that as long as there is so much competition, it's not going to happen that way. The vendor lock-in will happen in other ways because they're all racing to build higher level tools that impose specific workflows. Remind me of the second half of your question.
The perspective, how this will evolve. I mean, this leads to a situation where no human understands this code.
Correct.
And I find that a very disturbing situation.
On the other hand, if you're given a code base that's new to you, without any, without further documentation or just with insufficient and partly out-of-date documentation, how are you going to make heads and tails of it? You're going to have to spelunk that code somehow. And as long as you have AIs, at least the AIs can help you with the spelunking. This is all a pretty sad answer if you believe in a future where there's no AI left and we still have all this complex code. I think in the future where there's no AI left, those large ununderstood code bases probably also have lost their usefulness. So I don't know, in the sort of, we wouldn't be very, I mean, if you see how bad it is when an Amazon node goes down or when there's no power for half a day, we're already dependent on all kinds of sort of modern inventions that were much more survivable 50 or 100 years ago because we weren't so incredibly dependent on it. And everything is sort of where there's minimal buffering, so your grocery store is empty within 24 hours. We've chosen for this dependency. Yeah, maybe it's good to have a sort of a plan B set of hackers who you lock on an isolated island with lots of food supply flown in once a week. And they get to develop a sort of a backup version of critical software without the use of AI.
Okay.
You have it right there. So there's something that you can do about the business model here. We got.
I think we have one or two more questions. Okay, one is here.
Hi, thanks for being here. We mentioned about all those funds that are going into the AI companies right now. We see the valuations of Anthropic, OpenAI, and so on. And going back, OpenAI, for instance, was non-profit. And it's apples and oranges. I'm not saying that it's the same thing, but as an open source project, Python, going back all those years, have you had points where you thought regarding Python or some other project, you could go do something more commercial and go with the VC funds, VC money, and do something else? And why have you not chosen to go this path?
Well, I don't have a sort of an entrepreneurial mind. I also don't have much ambition. No, I'm serious. But at various points, people have suggested, why don't you create a Python startup? Why don't you commercialize? You made a stupid, tremendous mistake when you made it open source. My answer to that is always, and this is why, again, one of those butterflies, but it's like a whole forest full of butterflies. A programming language that is available commercially only, dependent on one vendor, has an incredibly difficult time getting any exception at all. Because who as a user, and I think Paul's example of the fourth generation languages is a good one. Who wants to use a new programming language, no matter how much your coders love it? Who wants to depend on that language if there's a single vendor who gives you the binary of the compiler only? What do you have to do if that vendor finds that not enough people buy his language and he decides to focus on something else? So open source for me has always been the one way to keep the language alive.
Last question.
All right, I'm going to. There's about 25 people waving at me.
You choose.
I see one here, so I go.
Benevolent dictator.
Thank you for that. Just as the last question, do you have any suggestions for open source builders and open source communities?
Optimize for attracting contributors. Don't measure your success by stars or likes on GitHub. Those are vanity measures. The number of people who actively contribute to your project is a much better measure for how successful you are, and also a good way of sort of guaranteeing the future of your project. Because at some point, the original maintainer always wants to go do something else. For me, that happened only like 28 years in, I think the math comes out to. For other maintainers, that happens after 3 months. Well, okay, they probably weren't that successful in 3 months. But it can happen at any time, a year, 5 years, 3 decades. So you have to plan for the future and sort of build a community, a network around your project to be sort of healthy. That's one bit of advice I have for all, that applies for all open source projects, basically.
Thank you.
Monique,
Thank you.
we hand it over to you, but I would say thank you very much to Vanessa, thank you very much, Guido. It was a pleasure having you here. So a big round of applause, please.
Yes.
Thank you.